When you create a table, you get the default border, a thin black line. If you want to change that to a different color or a different style, and even, in fact, add some shading to the cell, just go ahead and right-click on the cell and go down to Borders and Shading. It brings up the Borders and Shading window. Let me close out. Or if you want to apply this to a range of cells, go ahead and click and drag to select the range, then right-click on that selection and go down to Borders and Shading. Brings up the same window. Or, let me close out. Another way is coming up here on the Design tab, going to the Table Styles group, and you got the shading and borders there as well. Doesn't bring up the window, so you'll have to choose them separately, your shading, click off, your borders, if you have any. Of course, it doesn't give you the option of choosing the actual border color or style. The default is the thin line here, so you'd have to come down here again and click on Borders and Shading, brings up the window. Another way to bring up that window is to come up here on the Home tab to the Paragraph group, click on the Borders and Shading drop-down arrow, and there it is, Borders and Shading. So there's more than one way to bring up this window, but for me the easiest way is just to right-click on that selection to bring it up. But before I do that, let's go back to the Design tab. The other style that you have within the Table Styles group is the built-in templates. When you click on the More button, this applies to the entire table, these built-in templates. So if somebody says, hey, I was in Word and I found a built-in template that I really like. It's purple. It's got, when I come down here, the top header row is shaded in a deep purple. Instead of asking them to describe what that table looks like, just tell them to hover over it, and it brings up the pop-up name for that particular built-in template, and it calls it the Light List Accent 4. Then you can go ahead and click on it to apply it, but since I do not want to apply it, let me just go ahead and move off, and it doesn't apply it. So that applies to the entire table. I just want to customize these cells, the range of these cells, the borders, and also maybe add some shading to it. So I'm going to right click because that's the easiest, working down here within the shortcut menu, then coming up here on the ribbon and going down to Borders and Shading. Brings it up. We've got the borders and the shading. You have the page border, but we covered that in the Word Level 1 training video. So for the borders, here you can see the default style is a thin line, the color's black, and the width is 1/2 point. And it's being applied to the cell. You can click on the drop down arrow and apply it to the text, the paragraph, or the entire table. But right now let's leave it at the cell level. So if I want to go ahead and choose a different style, scroll down. Let's choose double line. You can see in the preview window that if I click OK right now, the selection that you can see behind this window, all the cells are going to have a double line around it and the borders in between each cell as well. So if I don't like that, I can go ahead and say, okay, I just want the double line on the top and bottom borders, okay? I want the thin line everywhere else. So what you'll do is you'll click to remove in the preview window those lines that you don't want to see. If I clicked OK now, I wouldn't have a left, a right, or a center border within that selection of cells. So I don't want to give up yet, but scroll up to the top, select the thin line style, and then click to add those back in. Now if I want to add some color to those double lines here, then I'd have to go back down to the double line, select it, change the color to, I don't know, let's do orange, that's fancy. Then change the width, maybe we want it something smaller or thicker, and then come back here and click on the top and bottom borders. But you know what, we can get kooky. We can have a different color top and heck, even a different style. Now notice that when I change the style, the color is the automatic, the default, which is black, so I'd have to come back down in here again and I don't know, choose a different color. It's looking horrendous, but you get the point. And in fact, let's change the point to 2 1/4. Click on the top and oh, okay. Anyways, if I clicked OK right now, that's what I'd get. All the cells selected would have a top border of a thick line, then a thin one, and then the bottom would be a double orange border. But before I do that, let's go to the Shading tab and say I would like some shading. So I can click on the fill color and I don't know, let's choose that tan background. Oh, this is awful. Go ahead and click OK and click off and well, you get the point, right? But nonetheless, we can do that. We can customize either a cell or a range of cells, their borders, and also add some shading if we'd like. Now, if you want to undo this, but you saved it and you closed out of the program, so you no longer have the undo option, then of course you'd have to select your range again, right-click, and then go down to Borders and Shading, and go ahead and click on the drop-down arrow on the Shading tab and say you don't want any color, so it removes it from your preview window. Go to the Borders tab and go ahead and scroll back up and choose your thin border, and well, it's got the default black color, 1/2 point, and then click at the top, click at the bottom, and looks like we're back to where we started, and click OK, and that's really fancy, isn't it? If I right click and I go back to Borders and Shading, and you're like, how does this work with the Apply To feature? Like the table, and we go ahead and we choose a different color, green, applies to the whole table here, but let's say I want to apply a thickness here to the entire table, but not maybe the top part. Let's leave that borderless and the left and right side of the table, and click OK. Notice how I don't have a left side, a right side to the table, and the table up at the top doesn't have a border either. In fact, that brings up a good point. If I'm looking at this going, is this part of the table or is that just text above the table? Well, there's two ways you can figure it out. One way is when you hover over this text, you can see the tag, because when I hover off, the tag isn't there, so that means that I'm not hovering over a part of the table or a cell. So when I hover over it, brings up the tag, well, then you know you're within the table. Another way to figure out if you're within the table is to come up here on the Layout tab and go to the Table group and click on View Grid Lines. That way you can see that it outlines the table so you can see where these cells are, how big they are, and be able to actually click within the cell. To exaggerate, to make a point, if I go ahead and select the entire table and I right click the selection, go down to Borders and Shading, and for the entire table I come up here and I say None. Notice in the preview window has no borders. Okay, when I click OK, let me click off, you can see that if I didn't have the grid lines on, it would be hard to tell if this was a table. If I come up here and turn them off and I hover outside of it, it's great when I print it, so it looks like I have my columns there, right? It looks nice. But when I want to edit it, I'm like, where's the cell? Is it here? Is there another cell over here? Go ahead and turn on the View Grid Lines so you can see that you have actually 3 columns, not just 2. And it's easy to work in. When you're done working, you can go ahead and turn them off, but don't worry because this isn't going to print, so you can leave them on. How do you know? As you recall, when you come over here, click on the File tab and go down to Print, in the preview window, what you see here is what's going to come out of your printer. Do you see the grid lines here? I don't, so it's not going to be printed, so you can leave them on. Let me go ahead and click on the File tab so you can go back to where we last left off, which was the Layout tab. And again, you can leave the View Grid Lines on and they won't print off. Thanks for watching. Hey, as a quick reminder, if you like my video, please give it a thumbs up. You can also click on me and subscribe to my channel to get notified of the latest videos. And for great specials on my products, please see the description below this video.